I've been fascinated with Egypt since I've been a little girl too, but made me dive a little bit deeper into ancient civilizations. And again, it's all connected, right? I just find it so interesting. If you love UFOs, you love so much more. It's not just UFOs. Like I
Mm.
think people always, they joke around and call me the alien girl. And I'm like, no, I'm like, sure, if you want to call me that, go for it. If that's how you want to label things, sure. But I'm like, really, no, I'm just fascinated with so many things. And I think that there's so many of us that love these topics and we're so curious, so deeply curious. And I think that that's like such a great quality to have.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcasts are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Chrissy, welcome to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I've been watching you nonstop this past weekend, and I've watched you before, but I'm grateful to have you on. I really am. You're a gift
Thank
to
you.
humanity.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's probably the nicest thing I've heard today and in a while, to be honest. It's been a busy day and thank you for listening to my work. I just appreciate that when anyone does. It's hard in this space. It's competitive, right?
Yeah.
So I just appreciate when anyone's listening and thinks it's good. Yeah.
I have a really hard question to start us off with, and if it's hard for you, you can pause and think about it for a second. But Fraggle Rock or the Muppets?
I forget sometimes that I do let people into my actual life. Oh no. Okay. Well, first of all, Fraggle Rock are Muppets, right? So I'll have to say both because they are Muppets. But if I had to choose between like the Muppets, like the Muppet Show or Fraggle Rock, I would go the Muppet Show. I'm like,
Mm.
even though Fraggle Rock was like done in Canada and it was recorded up in, I believe it was Nova Scotia, but it was Canadian. Well, it was recorded in Canada. The Puppeteers worked in Canada, but yeah, I'm a huge Gonzo fan. I love Gonzo so much. So, but that's amazing. It actually says on a dating profile that I used to have. It was like, "What do you go crazy for?" I was like, "Cheeseburgers and Muppets."
Yeah, that was my nickname in junior high, Gonzo. And
Was it?
I used to be really good in basketball, so they would call me Air Gonzo.
Oh, it's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Air Gonzo. I'm gonna keep that for in the back of my head. But someone said to me, someone had a recent dispute with me. It was like peep, pep or peep, or Gonzo, and I was like Gonzo. I'm like Gonzo is like the best Muppet. He's so optimistic. He's a little bit of a womanizer when it comes to the chickens, but I'll let it go. But outside of that, he's also like from another planet, and I just love Gonzo's optimism and he never stops like going and he just um he's just my favorite. But also he loves Miss Piggy dearly. I love his commitment to Miss Piggy. Or I shouldn't say he's not really the one. I think it's the chickens that follow him and he's not that interested and it's that he loves Miss Piggy. So I take that back. He isn't a womanizer or anything like that. He's a loyalist.
Yeah, I thought I'd start that off with that question. So
That's great. That's great. And it's funny because some people, if they know me, they know that I really like the Muppets. Um, but if you don't follow me on social media and stuff or things like that, you wouldn't know my other side. So I appreciate you even knowing that. That's really cool.
no problem. Before we start off, maybe you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do, since I
Yeah.
usually tend to mess that up.
No, yeah, for sure. So Chrissy Newton, I work with the Debrief, which is a science and technology news outlet based in Canada, or sorry, based in the States, and I'm based in Canada, but it's all over the world. People read it all over the world, and we talk about science, edge science, technology, and defense, and obviously UFOs. We are a leader in the UFO conversation, which is really exciting to be, along with edge science. So I do that. I'm also a host on Discovery Channel with a show called Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction. Hopefully, we'll get a second season. We'll find out soon. And I'm also a podcaster with my podcast, Rebelliously Curious with Chrissy Newton, that focuses on science, technology, and obviously UFOs.
Wow. Yeah, I was there, you have an episode that where you were talking to a scientist where they had a experiment with a robot that turned into liquid.
Yeah,
That was fascinating.
it's wild. It's funny because I think that the press, when we wrote about it, Christopher Plain originally wrote the story, and then not the didn't break it, but he was one of the writers that was on the scene writing it. But it's interesting because that story, I think, the way that they wrote the press release when it first came out made it look like it was doing its own, but it was actually in stop motion. I believe that they filmed it, but it was still doing really unbelievable things. But it could have been a little misleading depending on how you read the article or not. But I'm glad you read that or watched that. And not a lot of people, I think, know about that. And it's also, I think it was about 2 years ago that happened now. But it's so cool. All the stuff in edge science is happening is just like wildly unbelievable right now.
You know who I have coming on, and I think you would love to interview her. I don't know if you looked into her, but Sophia Stewart. She's
No.
the creator of Matrix and the
Oh,
Terminator, and she
oh,
won
wow.
the. Yeah, she went to court in 2014, but yeah, she wrote about it in '82, I believe it was. Yeah,
Wow. Did she write? When you say the Matrix and Terminator, what was was she part of writing the screenplay?
yeah, she's a screenwriter, yeah, out of USC. But yeah, she's fascinating. She had these insights as a young little girl.
Wow. I'd love to talk to her. That's unbelievable. So when you say insights, you mean by just the insights into what she was writing or into something else?
I, the insights of what she was writing, I believe she came in like at 4 years old. She talks about like just already being like evolved, just had a brain that was just, and heart that was just beyond the normal. If that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
no, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think the Matrix shows that, right? Like I think I reference the Matrix at least like once a month. I also have a black jacket I walk around in, and that's like a black trench jacket. And I call it's my Trinity jacket. I always say I'm in my Trinity era right now. Because I feel like so many things are happening in my life so quickly. And I feel like it's just references to like she was unstoppable. She was doing all these things. She was inspirational, but she was just also this like really powerful woman internally and externally. And I think she embodies a lot of women. I think women are generally like that, but I think in certain periods of our life, we obviously become stronger or learn more or grow or become wiser. And so I always joke around saying I'm in my Trinity era
Mhm.
because things happen for reasons. And sometimes I can't explain things or things just magically show up or appear. Like, people come into your life that you've never met and they kind of just show up at your doorstep or in your inbox or they're just there. And I find that magic. And that's kind of part of that Trinity moment, I feel as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, she says
Yeah.
her character's the Oracle in the story.
Really? Well, that
Yeah,
would make sense.
yeah, well, yeah, she's profound. I can't wait. Before we get going, I would love for you to. I think the first question I would love to ask was, what sparked your curiosity about UFOs and the unknown?
For sure. Since I've been a little girl, I've really loved UFOs and my dad really got me into it. My dad had a UFO experience with a group of people and like I think it was 87, it was between 87 or 89. I'm always trying to nail down the date with him. And one day we'll find it through media articles that I have to go dig through in Pembroke, Ontario. But yeah, he had a UFO experience, and my dad showed me a photo of a UFO that he took, and I was like, "What is this?" And like, it lit up everything inside of me, and I kept wondering, what is this? And I just wanted to understand more and more and more, and like why, and like what is this? And he would talk about it, and I think obviously his fascination and his journey was very much influenced on myself, seeing him as a young girl and watching him go through this and talk about it with friends, but also love the topic deeply and reading books and watching TV shows and all of that stuff. My dad is just such a, this is like, he's such a I think our whole family is now. But my dad makes really great
Mhm.
quotes. And one of them, we were driving in the one day and he was like, Chrissy, I'm not a local thinker. I'm not even like I'm not even a worldly thinker. I'm not even like a global thinker. He's like, I'm an intergalactic thinker. And that's what my dad is. He's for sure like an intergalactic thinker. He's got a big heart. He's gone through so much when he was younger and as a kid, and through family and experiences growing up, and had a really hard time when he was younger. And as now as an adult, you see this fascination with the world, who deeply cares about humanity. He's not perfect by me by any means. He's a human, but the really wonderful parts about my father is just like he does deeply care about people. And when I was younger, he'd watch the news, and I'd walk into the room and I'd say to my mom, "Why is Dad crying?" And she'd be like, "He's watching the news again." Like, he has lots of empathy and and sympathy for many people, but for just experiences and what's going on around the world, and really does try to contribute as much as he can to types of change, and to think bigger. And I wonder if that was a reason of growing up and having, we were chatting about this a little bit off the mic before, but experiences. And I have so much respect for him in that, because he is a wonderful man. Again, he's not perfect. He's got his own flaws like we all do, but he's done his best with what he was given earlier in life.
I love that. That's kind of how I am myself. And I hear some people talk about people that have empathy and more compassion, like kind of put it down. But I think it's a beautiful thing. It's our oneness, our shared humanity and connection with one another that we've forgotten in today's world.
Yeah, and I think it makes us people stronger. It makes them very strong, unfortunately, at an early age. But when you go through experiences, there's even stuff in neurology. I'm gonna kill the word like cysticity. I can never say it properly, but really, what it is that there's more of it in your brain when you've come. Like neurologists say this, when you've had a very traumatic or hard childhood or just upbringing, you have more of this in your brain, which they're trying to figure out if it's if it's a good thing or not. And what they're pointing to is that it probably is a good thing, because you can maneuver life so much easier, right? And we see that, right? But it is actually something that neurologically does happen to you too at a young age. Trauma obviously would be different, and there's experiences with trauma and that, and how we perceive the world. But the way that our brains look at neurologically, sometimes it's really not that bad that we've gone it's bad depending on how severe it is, but there are ways and within our neural pathways that create more receptors that we're able to understand and navigate the world better. And I think that coming from something hard, that's the upswing later on in life when you can work through it because you're able to really do anything.
I love that. Yeah, and I think we understand the golden rule much better when we have more empathy and compassion and understanding within our own heart. There's a saying, "Know thyself," as you heard before in Greek. But yeah, knowing yourself is knowing others as well, in my opinion. And the more I know me and all my imperfections and perfections, the more I can understand others as well, which leads to more understanding and more compassion and more in harmony with one another versus the us against them mentality.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't align with that us against them mentality. I just think it's not productive in any way. But it's hard. We all have our own things, and we have bad days. Like it's
Yeah.
no one's perfect. I had a bad day this morning. like it was just, and I was like, relax, Chrissy. It's Monday. It's Easter Monday. Like just relax. Like just it doesn't life isn't that hard. And there's always something to do. That's the other thing, right? We're such a busy world right now. So sometimes I have to tell myself to slow down in many different ways.
Yeah, I'm learning more and more not to be so hard on myself, and sometimes check that inner critic, and just pause. Sometimes life is hard, and it's not always farting hearts and riding unicorns.
Yeah, it's true. You're right. And you're right. Like sometimes we have to be kind to ourselves. We're not. Or the opposite. Sometimes we have to stick up for ourselves. That's the other
Mm,
thing too.
yep.
There's so much of that. Being kind to ourselves means also defending ourselves as well when we feel we need to be defended when it's appropriate. Yeah.
And boundaries, healthy boundaries.
Totally. Yeah. That's the one thing about I'm 41, and I think in this millennial generation, I know some people hate it, but I love it. I'm like, I'm really happy that our generation is talking. I'm not sure how old you are, but I know in my generation, we're talking about therapy. And I think that that's so important because, like, when did our parents ever talk about it? Like, never. Like, never. It's not something that was discussed in the boomer generation. And unfortunately, because their family couldn't afford it or wasn't able to do it, or it was just doesn't discuss. So I'm very proud of the millennial generation for, like, saying, hey, let's take care of our mental health and our bodies is just important. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Um, how much have your insights and your sense of wonder and evolved from young little Chrissy's understanding of UFOs and aliens to who you are now, and especially when it comes to the unknown UAPs and everything in between? What's shifted the most in your journey since you were a little girl?
What I think is going on or what my theories are. And to be honest, like, what I think doesn't really matter. It's, opinions are not facts, but in the concept of what I've learned and what I've experienced and who I've talked to within this space, and experience mean by just talking with people and what I've been learning, I've really moved away from the alien hypothesis. Because when I was a little girl, like, you couldn't change my mind that there wasn't aliens. And, like, there obviously are, I think, aliens out there, but are there aliens on Earth and, like, the way that we consider them aliens? No, I think it's something totally different. And, I feel very lucky. I get to chat with Jacques Vallée at times. And I was speaking to Jacques Vallée and I asked him, what do you think? Do you still think it's interdimensional? And he said to me, no, I don't. And I was like, that's so interesting because you have so many books and so many theories around that, around interdimensional. And he said, I just think we've just started. I don't think we are even close to knowing what it is. And we are just like infancy, and gosh, it's been like what, more than 70 years now since that infancy. So if we're just starting now, it's like, geez. So I think that our science hasn't caught up to what it is. And then obviously the plausibility that it could have been here the whole time. And it also being a couple actors, right? I just don't think it's one thing. I think it's multiple things. But I do more than ever feel that they're here, have been here for a while. It's a few different things. And I believe if it's like I do believe more interdimensional. But if we had to jump off from that, like Jacques Vallée said, then that's kind of like where we start interdimensional. And then like 200 years later, that would kind of be the beginning of it. And then we realize that it's maybe been something similar in line, but just something more evolved. And then our science is more evolved. That's what I feel. But there's so much going on with consciousness now, which is really wonderful and so exciting to see attached with UFOs. And that's where I keep learning more and just kind of digging into edge science as more as I can and the intersections are really beautiful. Like, who never thought within mainstream we'd see so many different intersections coming out into the public of like propulsion and consciousness, and everything goes back to, the road of UAP.
Mhm. Where did UFOs start to go away and UAPs started to emerge? Like, was there a specific reason to move from UFO to UAP?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I've heard, but I know the most recent is Jay Stratton started using UAP to get away from the UFO stigma because the word UFO was so stigmatized of like crazy, negative, people. If you were into UFOs, you're a conspiracy, theorist all the time. And no offense to the conspiracy people out there, but it was always a negative connotation, and they know this as well. So to get away from it and for government to take it seriously and to have real conversations, then Jay Stratton, the former head of ATIP, he used to also work with the Navy as well, but he ran that entire program and in the UFO task force, I should say, ran that entire task force looking into UAP within the Pentagon. And he was the one that came up with this along with the classification guide. And Lou Elizondo was part of helping him, obviously, in these missions of the UFO task force. So that's really why. And then I've also heard a couple things, but I've never fact checked it yet. So just if I say this, it's not 100% a fact. I did hear that it came from the UK originally, and that the UK was using UAP and not UFO, and that was way before the United States was using it. And then I've also heard that even just before Jay Stratton, UAP has always kind of been used very, very lightly in many different circles. But that's the main reason why the U.S. government decided to get rid of UFO and stick with UAP. And one day it will change again.
Do you feel like we're chasing the same questions over and over?
For sure. In UFOs, yes, I think in some degree we do a lot of circle reporting. There's tons of that, and that kind of needs to stop. And I think the circle reporting are similar questions. But the challenge is that we only know what we know right now. And so we're always trying to find out more information. And so with new information, there's new questions. But then we ask the same questions again and the circle reporting happens again. So, we could get better at that. But again, it's not the easiest topic, right? In context, you can have a lot of opinions and create a lot of theories, but it's hard to find all these facts, right? We've got data that we can point to, and the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies SCU is doing an unbelievable job looking at white papers and research around UFOs. And, Robert Powell and Rich Hoffman there are really helping scientists to look at this from a perspective that gives hard data and I'll say evidence to be able to back arguments of UAP so that the government can take it seriously, other people that are researching it, and then we can ask better questions.
Yeah, thank you. You know what kind of gets me? I'm a skeptic when it comes to people that call themselves, and no offense to them, I kind of question that. Would they call themselves galactic historians? What's your thoughts on that?
I've never heard that. Galactic historians? So I'm going to call my dad. A galactic historian. Wow. Gosh. I wouldn't use that. I think just historian makes sense. Being a galactic historian, I think my dad's a galactic thinker. He's not a galactic historian, but I don't think you can be a galactic historian for the fact that that's a lot of information. And I think that there's so many topics that you could cover under the universe and everything else. So I think that's probably very challenging, but I would just call somebody a historian that focuses on certain beats, right? And UFOs would be one of them. Or it could just be, some people love aliens. Like they are similar, but they're also different conversations. I really talk about UFOs. I don't really talk about aliens that much because I don't know enough. Like I've looked into it. Don't get me wrong. I think we all have. If there's different types of races and what I think it's very interesting, but we have no real concrete evidence of it yet, right? And some people might want to debate me on that. But with that said, it doesn't mean I don't listen to it. I just don't always report on it because I don't want to bring people down the wrong road. My job is to show them facts and to clearly lay things out. But I still listen to it. Don't get me wrong. But I think that if you're going to focus on things like that, you can't because you have to know astronomy. Like you'd have to know so much to be able to do that. And I think that there's too many categories that galactic historian would fit into. But anyway, if someone is, please send me a DM because I'd like to know how you consider the tagline. Like, I'm open-minded. I'm totally open to hear why people would call themselves that. I don't even call myself a UFO expert because I'm a journalist in this space that is growing and I write about edge science and technology and UFOs. And I also obviously host on Discovery, and I host a podcast, but I don't really call myself a UFO expert because there really isn't a thing. There's too many categories to be an expert. Like I'm not an expert in all of those things. I'm an expert in media. That's what I do. So I'm more of a media expert than I would be a UFO expert because there's just too many classifications. It's an area of subject. You need multiple people to contribute to it, and everybody's an expert in their own field contributing to the UFO topic.
Yeah, I asked that question because there are people that break down like our cosmic origins and they break down which species we come from, the Lyrians or the Palladians and so on. And they break it down in detail. I'm like, oh, when I was a kid, I remember growing up as a young boy in the 80s, I I remember looking at like Star Trek or Star Wars, and like that environment looked familiar to me. Like the mixed types of beings and stuff. Like I know that, but I don't know for sure. I was always intrigued. I had this inner knowing that I've been in a life like that, but I don't know for sure. But it's kind of strange I had that. So I don't debunk, or I don't like challenge their beliefs in a negative way. I just kind of a skeptic in a healthy way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that for sure it is because you don't know who's telling you stuff. You really have to, when it comes to things like that, and we don't have full hard evidence, you're really pushing the lines of believing somebody what they're telling you, right? So I think it's smart to do that. I do that with, everybody in this space to a degree because you have to, even people that work for government, you have to be mindful of what they're telling you. So I think that's very smart. I think it's healthy, right? A little bit of skepticism is never wrong. It's just making sure that you're getting the right information because it's important for what you're looking to do in your life and the people that you talk to. So yeah, I think it's totally important.
Yeah, me too. I definitely think it's important to question things and be a skeptic and do your own research and have your own intuition as well. Utilize that. You brought up your podcast and stuff, and you're gonna laugh at me, but I can't even pronounce it right. You ever have words that you can't pronounce?
Oh yeah, look at that! I said the word. I can't even say it. It's part of the brain. So trust me, I've tried to say it multiple times, and it's the one word I just have a heck of a time trying to say.
Well, let me try to say it rebelliously
Yes, yeah,
curious.
yeah.
I can't pronounce it. And the debrief, and you're also a co-host of Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction. Um, and they're powerful platforms. So my question to you is, what kinds of conversations are you most passionate about bringing to the public through these platforms? Because you have
Yeah,
some really great people on, good insights. Yeah, I'll shut up.
thank you.
Sorry.
No, 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 no. You don't need to shut at all. You're a wonderful conversationalist. I, I, I'm trying to talk to people about, or at least ask the questions that some people we all kind of want to know from like the average Jane perspective, right? Uh, about UFOs, because here's the thing, I write about science and technology and I talk about it, but it doesn't mean that I know everything about it. This is why I'm talking to people. I always laugh because I'm getting an education too, right? On these things and I'm reading about them and I'm very, very interested and I'm super curious. So I have questions that are, to multiple different topics. But my goal through talking about UFOs is hopefully getting people to understand that UFOs is not just in the paranormal, it's in the hard science now and it's in the mainstream. And it's something that academics are taking really seriously. And it's a serious topic along with science. That's why it says in my podcast, UFOs, futurism and science, because I think that it's in the same vein now. So I don't think we lump it to paranormal like everyone else likes to do in the entertainment or other, not so much news media now, but entertainment does, and even in podcasts. But I think that it's important that we distinguish that, and I also like to show hard science and edge science through the lens of culture. That's what I try to do as well. And why does it affect us? How does it affect us? And why is it important? We need to know because I think most people, I know when I first started in this field, I remember thinking, I don't know if I can do this. Like, am I smart enough to do this? And I was like, well, but I didn't go to school for science. Like, but I've loved this topic. I love science topics my entire life. I'm super curious. I have these conversations with multiple people. And then I realized I was like, it's not about being intelligent and being intelligent enough as, a scientist. We're all smart in different ways, right? I'm very smart in media and I'm very smart in different ways. I can't do the mathematics or the physics behind some of these things, but I understand the theory. And if I don't understand the theory, I'll take the time to learn it or talk to someone to understand it. So I felt that if I'm going to go through this journey and learn more and more about things that I like and feel that these topics might not be approachable, well, gosh, if they can be approachable for me, they can be approachable for everybody else as well. So I wanted to make it easy. And I hopefully am achieving that goal because I think that everyone can get into science and it's fun and technology and it's fun and it's so inspirational now and the things that are happening. We look around the world and politics and all the stuff that's politically happening and all the wars and conflicts. And it's so sad And when you look to something that you try to find something that's optimistic, you can look to science and edge science and technology and even UFOs and say, wow, this is unbelievable. And there's people that are collectively trying to create disclosure and bring people together and have a form of unity. I think this is a general core belief for the UFO community as a counterculture. And transparency is number one, which is, I think, good across all boards that this counterculture wants. But also then realizing that science and edge science is so optimistic, because if we achieve the goals and understand that we can help, maybe cure famine if we're doing the right things, we can look to help climate change. We can go off planet. We can live a better life. We might be able to hopefully separate that wealth gap and make it smaller. The challenge is science and technology are trying to do that, and they're fighting for that. It's politics and other people and greed and billionaires and other corporate politics that's creating that division. And so I think that once we look at scientists and academics, we realize they're really on our side. I think the average person's side. Most of them. Most of them. We could have another conversation of who isn't, but I think most people know what I'm talking about. And so that's why I feel that I'm here, because I'm an average person. And I think that, and I care, and I love this topic, and I can contribute meaningfully like you and everybody else.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I know I've talked to a number of people, and some people say about 25% of abductions or encounters are physically, and 75%, and I could be a little off on that, are outside of the body, kind of like astral travel, where we leave our body and like we've been abducted through our consciousness. What's your take on that?
For sure, there could be possibilities with our consciousness. We look at things like ayahuasca, right, and DMT. That could also be related. Mind you, it is a psychedelic. Uh, but there are things that make us feel like we're astro projecting and traveling, and have a better knowing of ourselves when people use these types of hallucinogenics. So I think that there's something connected to that. And I'm never going to say an experiencer is wrong. The only thing I ever ask to experiencers is that when they've had experiences at a very young age, to maybe go speak to someone about it, or someone in a clinical perspective about it, because unfortunately there's a lot of um, disassociating that children can have when it comes to abuse or things when they were younger, and disassociate and then connect them or create some types of images in their head, unfortunately, to be something else than what they are. And I am not a psychologist, and I don't want to tell somebody that what they're seeing is aliens when they might be just having some form of traumatic flashback or just disassociation with it. And so that, I think, is very important. But when anybody's having any of those experiences, they should talk to people in general. They should talk to people that are in this community and that are in a counterculture community, and then people that are psychologists outside of it. That doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. Like I was stating before about this millennial world, everyone should be going to a psychologist at least, a couple times a year, I think, to check in, right? Like it's just so important. So I think for them to understand how they view this in their own reality and what it means to them. And I think that's important. And so I think there are multiple ways. I think that something is happening to people, because there's too many people coming forward saying these things have happened. And we've seen forms of evidence with Benny and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, you name it. There's so many people that have come forward and have really strong evidence towards these experiences. So I feel, and we have bigger academics like Gary Nolan coming forward and saying he's had these experiences as a child. And so I think that it's important that people realize that these experiences could be real. It doesn't mean that they were negative experiences when they were a kid. They could possibly be what they are, and they've been happening persistently throughout their life. And then it also can be through consciousness. We're learning so much about consciousness every day. The telepathy tapes is a huge podcast. Kai Dickinson has done an amazing job focusing on the ability that people with nonverbal autism are experiencing this consciousness connection, that they're tapping into it. And so if that's possible, why can't we astrally, travel? Or why can't we have that ability to connect with something else, not in our physical body. So I know most people that like meta science would be like, materialistic science would be like, no, it's not possible, right? It's funny. I was watching a Woody Allen movie. Don't like him as a person, but love his films. Was watching a Woody Allen movie last night. I think it was, oh gosh, what was it? It was one of his comedies, but I forget what it is called now. Anyway, it was an earlier comedy of his, and it literally, when I joked because I've never seen it before, and and I turned it on, and it literally was talking about material science and how Woody Allen is this character that's trying to like fly a machine, and he's just trying to think outside the box and do all of these things that science tells him he can't do. So, and his poor wife is just like watching this guy do this and supporting him, where he's just like falling and breaking things. And most people will laugh and be like, "Oh, this guy's just a crackpot." But really, he's onto something. And the other scientist is coming in that he ends up meeting with, and I believe he's getting married, and he's a materialist scientist. And so he's like, none of that exists. So now I've literally just started. I put it on pause before I went to bed. So now we'll see where those intersections are. So the movie is a comedy. It's about love, but it's also about this topic of how these, even in Woody Allen's time, how these intersections are so important. But I think we're getting closer to the other edge now, where we're looking at phenomenon and other things that we never would have ever thought of or talked about because it was just more taboo. And now we're coming to the space where people are going, hey, this is more likely possible than not.
I love that. Going back to your show, Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction, you're a co-host. How did you get that opportunity? How'd that pop up? And what has been your experience with that? Were there any episodes or stories that really stood out or surprised you?
Yeah. So I was asked to do it just from seeing my work. And I know people at Discovery knew of myself earlier, which is really great. I know Ben Hansen too. He's such a great guy and has some wonderful shows on Discovery Channel, and hopefully we'll be doing more. But yeah, they found me through my work, and then I obviously had to audition. And some of the stories that there's lots that I loved. There's some that didn't go to camera as well. We did about 5 to 6 interviews a day, or I think it was at least 5 interviews a day, at least 3 to 4, which people may be like, that doesn't sound like a lot. And you're like, well, it, it is when you're talking to people about these experiences and trying to hold space for them. And then also do something for on camera, because it is still entertainment, even though there's obviously a reality aspect to it, right? You're still on camera doing camera things to a degree when it comes to having to say things again and get sound bites and stuff at times. But with them telling the story directly and straightforward, when they sat down, they just tell us our story and we never edit that. We let them say it. And then I start to ask questions. So there was tons and tons of cases, but one of them was a transmedium case that I really loved. And I've said this, I think, a couple times. He was a seaman, his wife or his partner, and they both live on a boat. And she was on the land. He was in the water on his boat. And then the Coast Guard ended up seeing this as well. But the shorter of the version of the story is that there was this triangulation that ended up happening. And so the wife called him while she saw this UFO over his boat, their boat, when she's on land. And he's filming it, but also saying, yes, like this is over my head. And then the Coast Guard saw it. And we looked at the Coast Guard records, and they even caught wind of this. And so when we did our research with Ben Hansen and a lot of other researchers on the team, because I didn't do this by myself, we ended up finding that this triangulation did happen, but there was no like high explosions coming from like the Navy or the Coast Guard or anything else. They were all low barge explosions. So nothing would have come into the air. So it was unbelievable because you have triangulation, you have transmedium. He saw it go into the water, go out, and then into the air. And so, which is not possible unless it's a drone to a degree, because there are drones out there that can do that, especially China has them. But it was a transmedium based. It was a huge object. I believe it was the size of a car, correct me if we're wrong, or even larger. And it was a triangle shape. It had the lights. He had a video and obviously screens, photos, because you can do screen stills. And great witnesses, experts, along with Coast Guards. So like you have all the data that you wanted. And when we were done recording, I went up to him and I said, I truly believe you found something and you saw something and it's unbelievable. And like, wow. And just, yeah. And he was saying, I see them all the time. And it was off of Catalina Island, which is a hotspot for UFOs. So, wow. And if it's not UFOs, there's something going on down at Catalina Island that we don't know about.
I love that. That was a special episode because I grew up right by there. I'm San Pedro, California, which is like right across from there. You can take the trolley, the boat, right there. But
it's so nice.
Yeah, and they found a lot of bones, giant bones there too in the early 1900s. There's always some kind of fascinating stuff over there in Catalina Island.
Yeah, the giants I've heard in Catalina Island, those big bones. I know that's been going around. I've heard a group of people have been looking into that. But yeah, Catalina is beautiful. I also, when I first went to Catalina Island, because I've been there once, I was actually filming a movie out there where it was very quick. A producer friend said, Chrissy, do you want to be in this? And I said, sure. I'm like, I'll come out to do a night watch. I said, I've never been to Catalina Island. I'm in California. I'll buy a ferry ticket. And so I like grabbed my dog and we like drove down to Long Island or Long Beach, sorry, and jumped on the ferry. And then I never thought it would be that, like, I didn't know really what I was going to expect when I saw it. And it was beautiful. It's such a quaint little island. And the architecture, everything. Like it was really nice. And I only I did a night watch there. So it wasn't like I got to tour around and then I went home the next day. But it is really remarkable. And I always love Step Brothers is one of my favorite movies. So, I was on the boat saying the effing Catalina wine mixer to myself and my dog as we're going. Yeah.
That's funny. I did a documentary there when I was a kid, but it was because I was a little bad kid getting into trouble. They try to straighten me out. It's still on
really?
Tubi, I think. Yeah, but yeah, I love that area. It's beautiful. And then you had another one where a lady in Latin America, where you kind of debunked her picture, and it was a fascinating picture at first. I was like, whoa. Like, who do you even find to help you research this stuff and come up to your conclusions? Fact or
That
fiction?
was a great segment to show. Okay, so if anyone is listening right now, or listening at a point in time, they will know that we've done a spoiler alert. So if you don't, plug your ears right now or skip for the next 5 minutes,
Sorry.
so we don't spoil alert. But yeah, she was from Latin America and she had a photo and she came in and she gave it to us and I was like, holy crap. I was like, this is the best UFO image that, if this is what it is, we've had the best UFO image you'd ever find. And so what we ended up doing was Ben Hansen really helped with this one. He's unbelievable. Like I love Ben. And I was even flabbergasted how he knew this. So he said, where was she? And we're like, okay, she's in Peru. So he's looking up with his team and he's been to Peru. And so he goes, what was she on? Like, what was she driving on? Was it a car or whatever? And he goes, well, she was in a train, wasn't she? And we said, yeah, she was in a train. From what we know, she was in a train. So what we ended up doing was realizing that when she took a picture outside the window in the train, when you look at the train lights, it's a reflection from the train light in the actual train reflecting off the glass. But in her image, it looks like a UFO because it's perfectly situated kind of like under a cloud. Like it has its own little cloud. Like it's such a great photo. So Ben, when he did his analysis, he's like, I've been on that train. And he looked into it more. And then we looked and found the lights and we realized that they were like almost exactly the same. And then the one thing we weren't 100% though, if she was on the train, we thought she said she was, but we needed to confirm it. And so when I asked her on site, we were like, okay, we know exactly where you were. So the cool thing about her is that she wasn't too worried about what she was getting. She was just kind of like, I want to know what this is, which is a good way to come into a show like that. And funny enough, we ended up debunking it, but it was unbelievable. But Ben knew about the train and knew that it was the only train in Peru.
Wow.
I know, wild, right? So if anyone's ever listening to this and they're on a train in Peru, just look up and take a picture. you you might get a UFO in your in the reflection.
You know where I live? I'm in Estrella Mountain in Arizona, West Valley. And I've seen crafts in the sky, and I recently seen like a pyramid one with orange, yellowish um, lights on the bottom, and it was kind of bright. It kind of lit up the street, and I thought, oh, that's a new street
Wow.
light. It was pretty low, but then I said that might be a drone as well. And if it's real, I'll see it again because I see so much over here in Arizona. And I was so tired, I didn't stop. And it was kind of hard to stop because I'm driving up one little road up to get up to the mountain. But I've seen other crafts. I seen one I showed Linda Mountain Hell this a couple weeks ago, and she's seen this before. It was like a cloud, dressed like a cloud. And I had to question myself: is this because I want to see this, or is this actually real? I always question my perception on anything. And what amazed me most was that no one else stopped their cars and looked at it because it was pretty big. So yeah, and I guess I'm leading into the question because I heard you bring this up. I never heard of this before. Was the 5 observable? What are the 5 observables?
The challenge with sometimes the 5 observables is that I always confuse 2 of them together. So instant acceleration is one of them. So being able to move at like rapid paces and like very, very fast. Hypersonic velocity without signatures. So showing like can go over speeds of Mach 5. And then with like signatures that typically accompany those speeds, but things like sonic boom or heat trails, and they don't have them. Low observability or cloaking, like I said. Transmedium travel is a big one, which we were talking about, which I think in the UFO close encounters, or sorry, alien encounters factor fiction. I wish I was in close encounters. Alien encounters factor fiction. The one I was saying about coming out of the water, that was like amazing because I think that when you see a transmedium UFO, it's more than likely the other observables might be obviously attached to it. Can be, but I think it's one of my favorites, to be honest. I find that screams UFO more than most. And I shouldn't say more than most, but it does scream UFO to me because we have nothing that can go into water, air, and space, right? Just right now, we have drones that can go from water to air. Positive lift and anti-gravity capabilities. So those are the 5 observables. And so Lou Elizondo and Jay Stratton were the ones that created that classification guide, but mainly Jay Stratton in the UFO task force to be able to observe what you see if it is a UFO. So if anybody's out there, Lou Elizondo, I think, explains it very well in a history segment that he did. If you Google it, and you can learn a little bit more directly from him, but it is a great place to start when you're looking at UFOs and going, hey, I can use the 5 observables to be able to, identify if what I'm seeing is a UFO or not.
Yeah, appreciate that. I remember going back the next day. Almost, I drive down the mountain a lot, but I clearly was looking for some kind of street light, a new street light or something that was put out, but could be a drone. I don't know, but it was triangle shaped, which I've never seen before. So,
yeah, you're welcome. And shapes are such an interesting conversation. Sky Watcher now, if you follow that, has been talking so much more about shapes, and it's funny because their shapes are not new, but they're not as the way that they classify them of them happening and what they've been seeing is more predominantly what we see less and not always accurate with what SEU finds, or not accurate, but not always compatible with what SEU finds. So the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, they did a whole shape study actually. When I went to the conference, they spoke about last year and did a whole analysis on it. And now what we see with Skywatcher and then also with Arrow. So we're seeing kind of 3 different conversations on what these groups that are doing really great research are seeing. And they're coming up with data that's a little conflicting with each other, which is, I think, very interesting itself.
Yeah, thank you. You've been featured on Ancient Aliens, which is a show I like to watch. I haven't watched it in a while, but yeah. What's your take on Ancient Aliens? Not the show, but as far as like our history, there may have been ETs in the past connected to our human origins. You know, you hear a lot of people talk about the Anunnaki. What's your take on
I love the Anunnaki stuff.
that?
But I really like folklore. I don't know
Mm,
how much I for sure know if it's something that's true, but I still listen to it because I think it's fascinating. I actually have from Mesopotamia, not real. I would like an artifact. By the way, you can buy artifacts. I think between $3,000 to $5,000, which is like still a lot of money, but not that bad for artifact over 5,000 years ago. Um, and so I love the conversation of Mesopotamia and the Anunnaki being their religion or their folklore that they would follow. What I did find out though that just before Babylonian days and during Mesopotamia, there was multiple religions within regions in the area. So Anunnaki was just one of them. It wasn't just what everybody believed. There was multiple different groups that believed many different things. So just a reminder of that. But I do have from the British Museum, I have a fake deluge tablet that
mm,
talks about the deluge, and the Anunnaki are not referenced in it, but the deluge is always referenced with the Anunnaki. That because of the Great Flood, which we know that has happened for in multiple different cultures speak of this in their religions or folklore, that something of a great flood did happen, and we do see it within our own. With on Earth, right, of the Younger Dryas era, and we do see reference of it. But I think that it's interesting because people say that that information from the Anunnaki allegedly was lost because of the Great Flood. And I find that such a great story. So I really do love it. I listen to it. And I do think that there's something there. Recently with the pyramids now, we're seeing these mega structures underneath the pyramids. So there's a lot of stuff we don't know, right? We've seen multiple libraries burn. There's so much information from the past that has not come forward into society. And if it has, I think it has been kept secret. I will be a conspiracy theorist on that. Right. And I think that some knowledge has been passed forward as well. Right. But I do feel uh, that yeah, there's something there. Do I know if they were speaking to aliens or starmen? I have no idea. But I'm not going to, you know, like Graham Hancock, I will go on the side of his. I'll be open minded to a journalist of it because I think it's fascinating and there are things that we don't know, and there are institutions trying to hold back information. We see it in modern day politics now. Why wouldn't it be happening anywhere else? It would just be weird for us not to, I
mm,
think, not to question that. So I do love it. But I think it's something that we know so much more now because like Ancient Aliens has really dived into it for like I think over 10 years, and they've done a great job that at least now because of our modern science catching up, we'll always be able to reference back, which is great when we learn more things. So who knows, maybe the more we learn about the present and potentially what happened or about the present and what these things are presently will teach us more about our past.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, you've interviewed some theologians on your channel, and I know there's like ex priest Paul Wallace and the ex Vatican translator Mario Bellino, who believes in. And if you're an ex translator of the Vatican, handpicked by the Vatican, you got to know your stuff, right? But he talks about that this may be talking about extraterrestrial beings in the Bible, which I find interesting. And I try to stay open minded. I just don't believe anything. They both talk about that, and I find that intriguing as well. Trying to connect the Anunnaki with the Bible. I don't know. I don't know if it's what's real or not, but even in Ezekiel, the wheel within the wheel passage, they talk about a flying craft. Yeah, I just find that kind of stuff fascinating. Even like you brought up Mesopotamia, the ziggurats, those structures, like why do they look like Mesoamerica or in Egypt, So I don't know. I just try to stay open minded because I believe there's so much about our past we don't know about, like you were saying. And there may have some lost civilizations like Graham Hancock talks about that we don't even know about, a whole different cycle or something. I don't know. But
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you too, for sure. Like I don't think we know everything, right? We
mm,
obviously don't. And I think we don't know a lot about our past. I think that's been lost. And I do think that folklore and entertainment kind of sometimes likes to play around with those things. So we have to be mindful. That's why I'll
yeah.
look at historians and journalists because they're really trying to answer questions and look for facts when they're reporting. And I, compared to what people think about Graham Hancock, I really like him. I've liked him for years. My dad introduced me to Graham Hancock, actually. My dad loved him. And for the longest time, I really did think he was an Egyptologist, until I realized later on in life that he was actually a journalist. And I was like, wow. And he even said, I think I watched something with him where he's like, I'm not an Egyptologist, I'm a journalist. And I went, oh my gosh, I thought you were an Egyptologist. And so he was the one that really not maybe fascinated with Egypt. I've been fascinated with Egypt since I've been a little girl too, but made me dive a little bit deeper into ancient civilizations. And again, it's all connected, right? I just find it so interesting. If you love UFOs, you love so much more. It's not just UFOs. Like I think people always, they joke around and call me the alien girl. And I'm like, no, I'm like, sure, if you want to call me that, go for it. If that's how you want to label things, sure. But I'm like, really, no, I'm just fascinated with so many things. And I think that there's so many of us that love these topics and we're so curious, so deeply curious. And I think that that's like such a great quality to have.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when I was in Egypt, the first thing I wanted to see was that hieroglyph with those crafts. And really
Did you
take
see
some
it?
time. Yeah, I took photos of it, and maybe I'll put it on this episode. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's no doubt in my mind those are crafts, and I even question that. Like, is it what I want to see, or is it like how are they all next to each other? And I don't know. I'm still open minded. I'm not closed minded about it, but those definitely look like a helicopter and other types of crafts, modern crafts that we see today.
Oh yeah. I really want to go to Egypt. I actually have this person that is an Egyptologist that I've just screenshotted and been like, okay, I'm going to call him. Because Anthony West actually, he was an Egyptologist and you could go with him on groups of tours of 10. And then he unfortunately passed away about, I think 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe longer, 8 years ago. And I was like, crap, I really want to go with Anthony West. So that's on my bucket list is to go to Egypt, but on my like real bucket list is to go to the Middle East to see ruins of Mesopotamia.
Yeah, me
They're
too.
there. Yeah, I want to see them so bad. I'm so obsessed. I spent 2 to 3 hours in the British Museum. I was there for work and I ran to the British Museum. It was like, this is all the time I have. And I could have went through the entire museum to a degree and looked at multiple things. But I spent 2 to 3 hours in this section that wasn't huge, but it was big enough for having just all these different types of like tablets and stuff like that. And I spent 2 to 3 hours just in the Mesopotamia section because it was just it blew my mind. Like it just blew my mind. So
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the
hopefully,
Penn Museum. I'm sorry,
no, go where?
the Penn Museum in Pennsylvania soon, just to because they have some stuff over there as well. I
Oh,
think they do have a copy of either the Sumerian Kings list or the Atrahasis. I'm not sure which one they have, but yeah, I'm gonna go check that stuff out since it's close.
oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know. Where are
Yeah,
you based out of?
I'm in Arizona these days.
Oh, right. You did
Yeah,
say that.
yeah,
Sorry, my fault. Right. You did say Arizona. Yeah. I'm like, I should go check that out too. I didn't know the States had any Mesopotamia pieces. So that's exciting.
yeah.
I thought it was all go figure in England. They took everything. So,
I hear they have
so
a body of during those times that they never did anything with. I'm not sure how
what?
true that is, but I've heard that on one of the Gaia channels.
Oh, I haven't seen when I went maybe recently, but when I was there about 6 years ago, I think it was, it was COVID. I think it was just before COVID. So maybe it was a little less ago, about 5 years ago, right? Because I was in England when COVID hit, which was kind of scary. So I was like flying home like literally that week when I was like in the middle of, COVID land. In England. And so that's when I was in the British Museum, which even more scary at that point in time. But when COVID hit, but nothing was there. It was just a lot of just like tablets and things like that. But one of
Mm.
them I laughed at. Like then they had the huge like deluge tablet, which I have like the fake one of in my living room. But I laughed because there's like these little tablets, and I think they have images of them now on Instagram. But I did take a picture of it, but I didn't make a meme. But one was complaining about how their kid had to do homework, And I was like, I think I took a picture and I was like, some things don't change.
Well, they have the first fart joke
Oh,
in cuneiform writing.
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, alcohol
Great.
recipes. Yeah, they have all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's so unbelievable. Like, and also like one of the first civilizations to like from politics, mathematics, like the written language. Like, it's so unbelievable the things that they had. Like, I couldn't even imagine being in Mesopotamia and the amount of inventions, maybe equivalent to what we have today, maybe to some degree, but like such a wild time. Like even just knowing how to communicate and starting to write. And I remember looking because a friend of mine, I thought this was interesting because we were talking about this tablet that I have. Um, Let me get it. Hold on. It's like show and tell. So this tablet that I have, it's on both sides, but it's like a replica of it, obviously. So a friend of mine, like, look at that from the writing.
Mm.
It's wild. And so a friend of mine was like, how did they, like, they must have taken forever to take this like wood or this piece of like stone and like have to chisel into it. And I said to them, I'm like, I thought the same thing. I said, but I looked it up and most people would thought that they were just here chiseling. It was actually really malleable and soft back
Yeah,
then. So when they were doing it and then it would harden. So that's really interesting of just the material that they use so they could write really fast. But it's wild.
yeah, it was wet
Again,
like clay, right? And they
yeah,
use a stick. I think that's what they meant in
exactly.
Greek. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty wild and I want one now. Like the plan is one day is to actually buy a tablet from Mesopotamia, even if it's like a receipt, because they had tons of
Yeah.
receipts, right? That's why there's so many of them. It's why you can buy them so cheap. But the plan is to like keep this, but then get like a real one.
Mm.
So anyway, we both geek out.
Well, I tried to order one on Amazon. If it was like a
Oh,
couple $100, like $200 or $300 for the I forgot which one it was. It's been a couple years ago, but it supposedly it was gonna send, and then it had to cancel because they couldn't send it after all. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I was bummed.
oh, yeah, and that's the only thing I was worried about was like the authentication of it. But
Mm.
there is
Yeah.
sites that like stores you can go to. There's one in Toronto that I was told that you can go buy those things and a dealer will get it for you and authenticate it for you. So that's the plan. But to be honest, I would really just love to go to Mesopotamia. Can you
Mhm.
imagine walking and then like somehow like if you're even on an expedition or something, tagging along and finding a little tablet? Like I think I'd lose my mind. Like I'd cry and then like run away so they couldn't take it.
Well, I hear
You
there's
know,
sites like Matthew LaCroix talks about. There's sites over there where they just let people just hang out and just like take advantage of. There may be cuneiform tablets there, and they don't. Yeah, they just they want it to get destroyed.
yeah, exactly. And that's yeah, exactly. And it's sad because I know that there's so much politics too, obviously, even around like the Middle East and all of the structures. And it's just but I did look up where I was like, where am I going to stay? And so I started like zooming into locations for Airbnbs. It's like where to stay. So one day I'll get myself out there. Hopefully sooner than later, at least within the next decade, I'll get myself out there. Um, and probably better to do it now as things, at least it's not, we're
Yeah,
not in so much turmoil. You get to a point where you just can't go at all and then I'll never be able to go. So probably should consider doing it maybe sooner than later.
yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna ask you one final question. I know we got to go. If you could leave humanity with one message about contact, consciousness, or who we truly are, what would you want to tell the world?
Whew, that's a big question. What I would tell the world about contact and humanity, like what I believe, or what if I had to tell the world, is that what you mean?
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
message from your heart.
message from my heart. Gosh, I think it sounds so cliche, but nobody's perfect, and we're all human. Like we're all the same, and we see that every day. We will always disagree at times. We will never get along at times. We are not perfect. We will make mistakes, but if anything we should do is just forgive each other and as best as we can. And I say that myself. It's very hard to forgive people sometimes. But we are all connected and we're all one. So, and I truly think that this UFO counterculture does mostly, and I feel is one of those major pillars, feels that as well. And so I hope that people realize that we're all so similar more than you could ever imagine. And if you get to know somebody and spend time with them and get off social media, you realize that we're all the same. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on. I really do.
Thank you. And so I love the name Mystic from the Hood. It's so great. It's so great. Okay, my question to you. Okay, my last question. Biggie or Tupac?
Biggie could flow better. Tupac spoke about reality. Tupac was like a realist. He was real. He could paint a story in your mind with what his words. I think he had was I think Biggie had a little bit more rhythm, but Tupac's my favorite all time. I love Tupac because he gave me. There was a point in my time where I wanted to kill myself. I was suffering from alcohol addiction, and I Tupac kept me alive at one point because he talked about reality. He gave me hope, and yeah, I love Tupac. I'm a big Tupac.
I'm a big Tupac fan too. I like conscious rap too. I'm a big fan of it. I say the same thing. I'm like, I like Biggie. I like his flow too. I actually like Tupac's flow better personally, but I like Biggie. My thing is that Biggie was an optimist and Tupac was a poet. So
Mm,
I think that like Biggie, if you listen to Biggie's, well, you do, but when people listen to Biggie's music, I hear the optimism, like, believe in yourself, you can do it. Like he's like so optimistic, he's a motivational speaker in it, right? He's like, you can do this. Like you're better than you can imagine. Like you want to listen to a Biggie song before you like go out and do something in life, because he's going to make you optimistic about doing well. I find. And then I think that you're right. Tupac was like a poet. He was talking about life. He talked about using satire, not in the form of comedy, but a reflection on society. And I love him for that because all of their music is still relevant today, both of those artists. But Tupac to me has always just resonated immensely in how he saw the world and how he wanted the world to change. And he was also an
mm,
activist. Biggie wasn't an
yeah.
activist, but he was an optimist, but he also wanted to create meaningful change too. So in his own way, that is activism. But yeah, I will say Tupac for life too.
Oh yeah, me too. I there was recently I found a guy from Los Angeles, and he's been out for a while now. Like in 2012, he was writing this. I think he wrote a song called "Who Shot Tupac," a Mexican rapper who has a lot of great flows, and he actually used almost every famous title Tupac used of each song in his flow, and it just and you could tell that Tupac inspired him. He could paint a story in your mind with his raps as well. His name was King Little G, and I think I'm like, whoa, this guy's actually when I was driving from Linda's house in New Mexico to Arizona, it was like a 7 hour drive, and I played his whole all his songs just to keep me up, but yeah, he was pretty awesome. But yeah, I love Tupac. I can go deep with Tupac, but I was watching his movie some years back in Ohio when I was in Ohio, and at the end of the movie, he dies, and I had tears coming down my eyes. I wasn't sobbing, but 3.5 hours had tears coming down my eyes. Eckhart Tolle, the spiritual teacher, talks about pain body, and I remember
Mhm.
having these feelings like Tupac wasn't the only one who died. A lot of my friends got murdered. A lot of my friends were in prison for the rest of their life because we grew up in that environment as well. But I had this deep knowing and voice saying we just didn't know any better. We were looking for love. We're looking for feeling like we're somebody, or trying to have connection and community. We just didn't know any better, and so all those tears going down my was healing tears. All that stored energy inside of me started to become released, and I felt lighter after.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm like, yeah, it's so true though. It's so true. I watch a lot of things sometimes about justice reform because I do think it's really important. I know in some celebrity world, it's like very topical right now, especially with Kim Kardashian and trendy. And I guess, hey, let, prison reform be trendy. I'm down for that. Not going to knock it. We need people to help, but it is something, after talking to people or hearing about experiences or even just seeing what jail is like. I haven't been to jail, but just seeing what it's like from shows or other things that are showing the parts of realistic sides of jail. It breaks my heart, because a lot of people that are in jail, it's not a choice. They don't want to be there. The way that they're treated is totally unfair. There's so many things that I wish would change for that. And I've written a little bit about the debrief. Thankfully enough, Micah Hanks let me write a piece around prison reform in science using film, soft science, to change people's perspectives on how inmates are being treated. Because I do think that that stuff does need to change. People make mistakes, people can be forgiven. And also there is redemption, and people can learn so much more about themselves and change their ways. I think it's a very, very small group in the world. I don't think that everybody is a good person, but I think that there is a very small group that are very evil people. I don't think that it's a massive group. I think just there's a lot of people that have bad experiences, don't understand themselves and are misunderstood, and just make bad decisions. I don't think they're deeply evil. I think being deeply evil is a small percentage. And so I think that there's lots of room for reform. So I'm sorry your friends are, and some people are that. I hope that changes for them.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you have Gabor Mate in Canada, and he came up with that documentary, The Wisdom of Trauma, and he talks a lot about that as well. It's a beautiful documentary for anyone that wants to have deeper understanding of the human condition and the effects of trauma.
Yeah, you're right. And, maybe sometimes going through really hard things is really hard, and you can become obviously a better person out of it. And going through, growing up in positions that were probably not favorable, with income or experiences. But I will say you become very self-actualized in many ways by dealing with that compared to others that have never dealt with hardships whatsoever. And good for them too. Like, gosh, like good for them. Right. And not saying that other people don't, what they go through is less important. But I think that, when you really deeply go through something hard and you're on the other end of it, I think you truly understand yourself and others much better. And isn't that wonderful? Because then you can live a really great whole, full life even more, and I think that that's really beautiful, because we should try to strive for that, I think. So that's how I would take it. We've all been through bad experiences, but it gives us vision to live a better life, and a longer one, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for coming on. I can keep talking to you. I had so many more questions I would love to ask you. Maybe I can get you on in the future again. You said full circle, going back to Tupac, there's a quote: for every dark night, there's a brighter day. And that's a beautiful message for any of us going throughout, every day. Some days may be hard. So I got to remember that for every dark night, there's a brighter day. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. And it's Boo Boo. I love that. It's the best. Best name, best podcast title, hands down. And
Thank
yes,
you.
and I hopefully see you more, Boo Boo.
Thank you. Yeah, the logo's I was on the Nile River. I created that logo on the Nile River.
Did you? It's great. Yeah. I'm also a huge Yogi Bear fan, so that is even a reference to somewhat of it. I still love it. Me and cartoons and the Muppets as well. But thank you, Boo Boo. And hopefully, yes, and we'll chat again.
Thank you. Take care. Namastizzle.
Yeah, you too. Namastizzle.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.